All right, well, let's kick this off. Big news, of course, is not only the stock rising quickly, but also full self-driving. We got 13.2.1 that started to roll out wide to all AI4 customers. And Ashok Kalaswamy promised also that the holiday vehicle software updates coming next week, within a week or two. And the team's working on what he calls a much updated version 12.6 for the AI3 customers by the end of this year. It's not 13.2, but it's upgrade 12.6. And so far, people who have been testing 13.2, everything we've been hearing so far is that it's just amazing. It's doing incredible things, surprising everybody. And we've got to get Jeff Lutz here, because yesterday he could not stop himself from telling me 5 times. He couldn't stop telling me how great the car is. I've got JC here as well. He tested it as well, so we'll listen to him. Go ahead, Jeff. Why don't you get started?
Yeah. Hey, Herbert. The example I give is, so people kind of understand it kind of relatively, is when I was driving V11 a year ago, I was probably using FSD maybe 1 in 3 drives, maybe 1 in 4 drives. I was using it 4% of the time is a way to think about it. And then, as V12 came about, especially after 12.3, closer to 12.5, it really grew to like 70 to 80% of my drives. And, it's getting better. It's not requiring, as much intervention and so forth. With V13, I've done a couple drives today. I did 3 or 4 yesterday. I mean, I don't feel like I need to drive anymore. Like this, all the things that were kind of nagging, I shouldn't use the word nagging, but they were kind of just unresolved in V12, even 12.5, 6, which was really good. But in 12.5, 6, when you like turn out of a neighborhood and you want to accelerate up to the speed limit, sometimes it did it, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes the acceleration was kind of weird or janky or just never got there. Sometimes it took too long to slow down. The turns were close to the curb. All these different things, and all these things have been worked out. And so far in this version 13.2.1, it's more human-like, it's more natural. I think this, photon latency reduction is significant reduction. So it's seeing things faster, and it's then sending, information to control the car more quickly as a result, and reducing that latency, may have been the ticket to just kind of smoothing a lot of different things out. So now I don't feel like I have to drive. I feel like 100% of the time I just want to get in the car, say where I'm going, press one button, and let the car drive. The other big difference is now the car will back out of a spot or back out of your garage and start driving as soon as you press that button and enable it. You've got to enable it, by the way, in the menus. You've got to enable that one button FSD start in the autopilot menu. If you don't do that, you won't have that option on your screen once you get it. But yeah, it's meaningfully better. I feel like I don't need the human drive anymore. And it wasn't for me. That wasn't the case on prior revisions.
Jeff, what did you mean when you said that it feels like it's reading your mind?
Well, it drives like I would want it to. Now, I have it on the hurry profile. I think everybody drives differently. But again, like instead of like pulling out of a neighborhood and, just accelerating kind of moderately, it accelerates the way I would accelerate. It deaccelerates the way I would deaccelerate. It approaches stop signs. It does rights on, more predictable right on reds now. So, again, I need to, like anything, and I have a background in product and quality and test and so forth. So I know I need to show it more opportunities so I can probably get it into some sort of jam. I'm sure I can do it. It's just, that's the definition of this stabilizing. It looks like it's going to take longer for me to figure out like what's going to jam this thing up. And that's the name of the game. But yeah, I feel like it reads my mind because it accelerates, it deaccelerates, it turns the way I want it to turn. And, this is coming from gobs of sensor data and like what is a comfortable drive. And Tesla has all this data. People think like Tesla's just like capturing like video data. They're capturing a ton of data from our vehicle. there's sensors all over the vehicle. That's how it, by the way, it's capturing all the data for insurance. Knows if you're doing a sharp turn. How does it know you're doing a sharp turn? How does it know you're doing an abrupt stop? It has all the sensors. It has all this data. So I think it doesn't get discussed enough. But not only is Tesla is going to engineer and enable a safe ride with eliminating safety critical interventions, it also has the sensor suite to enable a comfortable ride. And I think people that have been in Waymos and now been in the most recent Tesla are saying like Tesla's starting, to pass these other robotaxis in ride comfort.
Nice. And then JC, you had access to 13.2 even before Jeff did. Would you agree with them? Is this something that you would say is safe enough that should be, distributed? It is being distributed far and wide now, but is this something that is it?
It is absolutely everything Jeff has said. Today is my second day with it. I actually drove it about 80 miles from one end of Houston to the other. So city driving, highway driving. Met X-Man, who's also on X here in our Tesla community. Met him for Luby's for lunch because that's where retirees go to get their green Jello and Luann baked fish plate. But man, I will tell you, I see Phil. Thought I saw Phil down there. And by the way, I love Phil's stuff. He's, so great. I am not a scientist, Herbert. I am not an engineer. But what I can tell you, just with 2 days in my car, it feels like the FSD version I'm with, it was made for my Tesla. And I'm not getting like Jeff saying before on version 12, I had wonderful drives, but there would be times where you'd feel like, oh, that was just, I could feel a little anxiety. It was double thinking, triple thinking. I'm gonna tell you what, this version 13.2.1 fits my Tesla like a glove. I am in an AI4 Model 3 that I just got 3 months ago, and it's stuff that I'm putting in. I've got a video of my drive today. I'm getting that downloaded as we speak, and I'll get that out for everybody. But today was my first day on the highway with 13.2.1, Herbert, and I was actually more amazed at what it did on the highway than some of the stuff that it did yesterday. I mean, yesterday it blew me away. I don't know if you saw my video, but it left me speechless. And you can ask my wife. That's really hard to shut me up. And it did. It just shut me up for 10 seconds. I was sitting there like, well, wait a second. I just left my house where I was normally parked. I did not have to position my car in a special way. It was parked against, my garage where it would have to back out. It backed out of my driveway, got on its journey, took me 5 miles to the HEB through a couple of, school zones and through a pretty busy median into a HEB parking lot and parked me perfectly, ironically next to another Tesla. That's the other thing. All of a sudden, yesterday, I saw like 7 or 8 other Teslas in my area. And I'm like, where the hell did these all come from? It's like all of a sudden, I get version 13 and all the Tesla, because this isn't Teslafornia. This is Porter, Texas. This isn't exactly EV Central here. And all of a sudden, I see a bunch of them. But no, Herbert, it is just,
Nice.
it's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And I would say push it out, get it out like now
Now
to everybody. Yeah.
it must be magical when it actually parks itself and then unparks itself. So a question for both of you then, like, what is it that it did not do right in your drive so far? And what is the one thing that it did do that really just blew you away when you say that it's so amazing?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, you want me to go? I'll say the
Go.
one thing. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing it's still doing, Herbert, and I think Omar mentioned this on
Mhm.
when the OGs got the earlier version. It's still getting the red hands. So interestingly, I got no red hands today, and I drove through some rain as well as some pretty harsh sunlight. Zero red hands today, but yesterday I did get two when the sunlight hit directly into my front windshield camera. And funny thing, Herbert, both times I was going 0 miles per hour with no cars around me. So I'm like, all right, if you need me to re-engage so you can continue to go 0 miles per hour, I'll do it. But it is interesting that we still got the red hands there. They pop up a couple of times. The thing that just really blows me away, Herbert, is you can see the feature complete coming through. Is it
Mhm.
100%? Absolutely not. So, it's still like we don't even have the ability to tell it where to park yet, right? So it's still, even though it's
What?
getting into
I thought you
parking,
can.
well,
I've seen people say you can put your finger on a pin on a map.
yeah, I think you could do that. I mean, like for me going to Luby's, I've never been to this Luby's before in my life. So
Mhm,
most people are just going to navigate to Luby's, right? It's
mhm.
40 miles away from me. So I have no clue what that Luby's parking lot's going to look like. So like today, when I did navigate me to Luby's, got me into the parking lot perfectly and literally dropped me off right at the front of the Luby's like a Robotaxi would.
Mhm.
So that's the question I have, and maybe that's a technical question that I need to figure out how to program better in my Tesla because it's done it like half the time it's tried to park me in a parking spot and done it perfectly. And then there's a couple of other times where it will drop me off right in front of the place I'm going to as if it was an Uber, as if it was a robo taxi. And so I'm wondering if there's something I need to do but I noticed in the release notes, Herbert, that said it was to come. Like one of the things to come is it can drop you off like a robo taxi, or it can get you inside of a garage, or it can get you to a specific parking spot. But it said in the release notes that's still to come.
Thank you, JC. And then
Absolutely.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'm not having the red hands. I have a Model X. I just haven't seen that yet. I've only done about 5 or 6 drives. Maybe I will see it, but I haven't seen. The only thing I think that could possibly happen is FSD deciding it can get through an area, like it may attempt to get through something that it can't, or it may not. It may choose not to get through. Like maybe it's a right turn on red where there's a car in front of you and it's trying to wedge. Those are the only things I could anticipate that probably still need to be solved for, but I didn't actually run into any of those issues. So again, for me, it's like I need to drive it more. I need to get more data, but when I do a objective comparison, like I never got on these calls before and said it's done. I don't
Mhm.
feel like I need to drive it. I've never done that before. I'm like, all right, well, there's still things that the speed or whatever needs to work through. But man, now I don't feel like I need to drive anymore with it. But yeah, there's more to do. You look in their release notes, as JC said, there's more coming. There's more to do. And so Tesla's got to continue working through that. I think we're still at the earlier stages of this, and just trying to imagine like what are they driving at Tesla? Were they driving 13.5 or something even further advanced? It takes a while to train these models. So yeah, it's definitely a meaningful step up. That's the only way I can describe it, is just use my own kind of internal what do you call relative measurement in terms of how often I use the FSC. That was the way I compared it.
Okay,
Well,
welcome, Omar. Thank you for joining us. We're talking FSD 13. You've had this for a while, and you made a post saying that you're not special anymore. What's your thoughts about it? Obviously, you've always been saying it's quite good. Now we're hearing from lots of just regular people using it and getting their minds blown. Is there something that you think it still needs to be fixed, or what's your comments about it?
Hey,
Hey.
yeah, so it's looking pretty good, but I mean, this is just the FSD 13 mini. You
Hmm.
sometimes see with these AI models, there's Grok 2, Grok 2 mini, ChatGPT 4o, ChatGPT 4o mini. We're only running the mini version so far. So there's a ton of stuff. You can see it in the release notes under upcoming improvements that they're finalizing and trying to get out pretty soon, making the model 3x larger, increasing the context window 3x, new options that are going to allow you to pick rather than it just doing what makes sense. You'll be able to say, okay, I want you to pull over at the destination. I want you to go find a parking spot and park. I want you to pull into my driveway. I want you to even pull into the garage. So really, we haven't seen anything yet. We're about to witness a really fast pace of FSD improvements. and it's gotten to the point where it's definitely consumer grade. You could really tell an ordinary consumer to use this, and just talking to ordinary non-tech power users in my life, they are using it and they're getting quite a bit of use out of it. So FSD supervised is becoming increasingly material, especially as they roll it out internationally. So just looking at this quarter, I would expect to see a higher uptake of FSD subscriptions and FSD purchases, especially with the referral program giving people some discounts on, purchasing FSD. Um, and you're also going to see revenue recognition associated with not only the release of certain features in the United States, such as reverse, but we've also seen Autopark and Summon launch in Europe, launch in China, and I believe I also saw South Korea. So all of these features, it may seem like a small thing, actually, Smart Summon, but for these users in Europe and China, this is going to be the first time they've seen the FSD 13 stack. So the FSD 13 model will be running. It'll be able to, operate their car driverlessly for a short amount of time. And this will really be their first peek at what's coming in 2025, which is hopefully the launch of more of these FSD supervised features we have here in the United States, pending regulatory approval, of course, in each of those markets. But, last quarter we saw about 300 million in revenue recognition related to Summon and CyberTruck FSD. I think you're going to see another decent chunk, maybe not as large, but, probably several tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, as well as increased sales or subscriptions. This is really becoming increasingly material as we look at the auto business sort of evening out. We've got 3 sequential quarters of improvement here. So they're just shipping incredibly fast. I think users are generally very satisfied with what they're seeing. I think the best is yet to come. And as they roll this out, not just in the US, but roll out some of the other features like Smart Summon and Auto Park in international markets, you're going to see, I think, material financial impact to Tesla in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, can you guys speak to it's just mind blowing, isn't it, that they can just roll out as actual Smart Summon to China and South Korea, maybe in some Europe, any parking lot in any part of the world, and it's like it can work. And then, of course, we've also got this rolling out in Canada too, and I think Cybertruck owners have this ability. Why don't we just start with that? Just this ability for this to just, features of it available anywhere in the world as soon as they get regulatory approval.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Waymo make an announcement that they're going to
Right.
be demoing with, in Tokyo. I think it's also not really recognized that this is the only self-driving stack that works all across the world.
Yeah, the one in Japan, and Waymo just announced about Japan, but actually what they're doing is they partner with a taxi company there just to drive the Waymo car, still driving it, just to start mapping this. And they're going to do that for the next 6 months. This is before they will, obviously start doing Robotaxi rides. This is so expensive for them to have to do something like this. Tesla wouldn't have to do something like that, but and then what's your thinking about the FSD in Cybertruck? And then what about V3 or AI3 is not getting 13.2?
Yeah, Cybertruck FSD 13 is pretty incredible. It really is largely the same experience as the Model 3, even though it's a much larger vehicle. This thing can still navigate through tight traffic. It can drive quickly. It really is in many ways the best FSD experience because you're just so comfortable with the, interior space, the air suspension, that I mean it really just feels like, almost like sitting on a couch in your living room while this thing just kind of, wheels you around. So I think really Cybertruck FSD users will be very happy. It's a big, big upgrade. Some of the awkwardness of that initial build, um, I'd say it's much more refined. And yeah, I think it's it's really kind of a category killer if you think about it. If you're someone who spends all day working in your truck, this FSD supervised for city streets and highways, this thing will change your life. I think it's powerful enough that even people who may not have ever chosen a Cybertruck otherwise, who didn't like the looks, you just can't ignore something like FSD supervised. So it's really good to see 13 on not only Cybertruck, but also SNX. Cybertruck doesn't have the reversibility yet or the ability to press start to use FSD, but that's coming soon. And as for AI3 has not been forgotten. Right now, they're in the final stages of validating a new release for AI3, which is going to be 12.6. And that is going to include end-to-end on the highway and other improvements. A lot of things that are even in 13, they've kind of moved over with 12.6. So 12.6 will be a significant improvement for AI3. In Q1 2025, they're going to release V13 for AI3. And that'll be able to reverse. It'll be able to have the start FSD button, all the good stuff the AI4 cars are getting. It's going to come to AI3 as well. And I understand that Tesla's also working on developing an upgrade from AI3 to AI4, which I think will also be a pretty big deal. So if you have AI3 and you can't afford to upgrade your car, don't worry, you're going to continue to get updates. They won't be as good. These are going to be sort of distilled down models. But going forward, the development path is basically going to be training a new cutting edge model that's designed to work on AI4 and then backporting it back to AI3 sometime after that and bringing a version to AI3 later. But it's not the case that AI3 won't get updated anymore.
Thank you so much, Omar. That's fantastic. So we've, oh my gosh, it's version 13.2 looking really good. We're going to hear almost daily here more and more people sharing their experience. Let's talk stock. I saw here from Tesla Economics. Tesla closed, of course, today another all-time high at $479.86. And this means, and I like the way he did this, he had a whole kind of a series here. Year to date, it's gone up 93%. 1 year ago, 219%. 3 years ago, 54%. 5 years ago, 1,800%. And onward, since IPO, would be 42,000%. So it's just gone crazy. Since we're talking FSD, do any of you think at all that this version 13, Omar's videos in the last week has caused anybody to go crazy and go, that's the reason? Yashu, you have some theories on why the stock has gone up, and it's unlikely to have anything to do with FSD. What's your thinking, Yashu?
Look, I love FSD. And on the AI3 model point, Omar, that you're making, I agree. I think updates will come. I actually think it's quite, and I have an AI3 Model 3. Obviously, I'm disappointed I don't have 13 yet, but I think it's actually a pretty good signal that they're getting pretty close to unsupervised next year. Because if you're getting close to unsupervised, you don't really dedicate much resources to the AI3 stuff for now. You kind of go gung-ho on the cutting edge stuff. So I actually think it's quite positive that they're focusing on that. But on the stock, yeah, I mean, long story short is basically all these fund managers are now pretty much running to get themselves equal weight or overweight on Tesla. They've been snoozing, they've been underweight, they've been cutting. I think the squeeze up recently, a lot of fund managers pretty much got cut with their pants down. And now it's like this big squeeze to get equal weight. This week is triple witching, so a lot of options will expire. There'll be a lot of liquidity on closing cross on Friday. And I think this week, it's probably going to be the bigger week in terms of volume. That doesn't necessarily mean price action. There's a distinction there. I think volume, like S&P inclusion is a good example of this, right? When Tesla first got included in the S&P, everyone thought, okay, where are all these shares going to come from? Of course, Tesla ran up a little bit, but when it came up to the closing cross on that Friday week, it was kind of a nothing burger day, but it was mass amount of volume on the close. So I think this is the week where I think a lot of fund managers will try to probably just get equal weight on something that they've tried to exclude for a long time, and now they pretty much can't ignore.
So does it stop on Friday, or do we still get window dressing all the way till the end of the year?
Yeah, so you could in theory get it to the end of the year, and I think there's some accounts that follow that. They're actually thinking Santa rally is actually not going to be until next week. But I think in terms of bigger institutional money, and you really like your worry is if you're really underweight and you need millions of shares or whatever. Doing it in the open market really hurts you. So if you're not doing block trades, you're probably waiting to the closing cross this week. Triple witching will provide them a lot of liquidity to essentially catch up. So I think up until the end of the year, the incentive to book profit on Tesla is probably not super high for a lot of people. And so a lot of people might wait until January to close out a lot of their realized profits. So it gets pushed into probably next tax year.
Thank you so much, Yashu. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.